I know, I was outrunning it. Okay, well, I did make some promises to you, so we should probably start so that I can fulfill my promises. I'm not Jesus, but I can still try. That was Esther. Okay, just go get a paper towel to clean up the table. I'm not worried about the floor, it's just water, but. Did you get some on you? It'll dry off.
Like our little Roman from Oklahoma, if he gets water.
Go get a paper towel, Esther.
Yeah, change all his clothes.
Yeah, we've had a rough week. Her medicine ran out, and then it's a controlled substance, so you can't just go get it at Walgreens.
Yeah.
Well, you can get it at Walgreens, but you can only get a 30-day supply. So then it's like, okay, so then we get it through this other pharmacy. And of course they ship it like parcel, select. So it sat in Chicago for like 4 days. And like, come on, people. I don't understand, well, I do understand. The reason why all of medicine, including pharmacy, is so terrible. I mean, it's poor customer service. There's no competition.
Yeah.
Maybe CVS and Walgreens, but that's about it, right? Now Amazon too. You can do pharmacy at Amazon. But with no competition, what incentive do they have to do a good job? They don't. They have none. They don't care. You call them, you sit on hold for 2 hours, like as if that's normal and that's acceptable. But now I'm going to complain. All right, let's not complain. That's Solomon's job. I don't remember. Where did we leave off exactly? How far did we get is the question. I know we started on chapter 2, right?
We did.
Okay. All right, well, let's review a little bit of chapter 2, and then we'll move on. Remember, chapter 2, he had this statement at the end of chapter 1, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases in knowledge increases sorrow. All right, and then chapter 2, he's going to show you how he himself tried to test this theory with his own life. Now, I know we don't like all of this madness and folly and grasping at the wind and vanity. But what Solomon is teaching us to do, I was thinking about this yesterday in my 8.5 hours in the car. What Solomon's teaching us to do is to be real. All right. Now, part of being real is being truthful. All right. But as we know, truth is not exactly the same as just giving us information that's not false. Oh, look at that. What is this?
Happy anniversary!
Oh my word.
Sorry we're late.
We didn't order a cake. We can't even do it.
All right. Do we have plates and stuff? Or we? Okay. All right.
Help yourselves.
Can I talk to you while you get cake? Is that going to work?
Sure.
All right.
And you
So-
can all cut your own piece.
Yeah. We don't make the anniversary people cut their own cake.
That wouldn't be right.
All right. So back to what I was saying. Don't get too distracted by the cake. Just listen. What Solomon's teaching us to do is to be real. It's to be real, and we don't live in a real world. I mean, we do.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you watch TV, right? That's obviously fake. Then you watch the news and you're like, well, that's true. No, it's not real either.
It's not real either.
No, it isn't. And why not? So what's missing with, say, the news, be it print, internet, whatever? What is the problem with media?
The other side of the story.
Yeah, the other side of the story. So it's not. We would say it's not comprehensive, right? It doesn't give you both sides, right? Or it doesn't always tell you everything. All right. So the way to be real, is to be truthful, but not just truthful in a sense of like telling some of the truth, or right. I mean, you have to tell the whole truth. This is what, if we want to find out what really happened in a court case, they actually make you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, right? Okay? But the whole truth. Now, how are you going to find out the whole truth of something?
Yeah, that's the hard part.
All right, well, maybe I just put it this way. What gifts does God give you to tell the whole truth? What does he give you in order to know what's true? Okay, that's, the Holy Spirit, the scriptures. You guys, you're very churchy people. I appreciate that. and you're right. That's what's usually lacking, actually, for most truth-telling, is no word of God, no spirit. All right, but basically, like if I wanted to tell you, I don't know, what's something true that's obvious?
The sun came up.
The sun came up today, correct. How are you going to know for sure that that's really true? Really, really, the thing that happened? Okay, you have memory. Oh, your eyes and your intellect. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Yes, your eyes. Do your eyes see anything? Not exactly, right? It's not the eye that sees. It's the mind that interprets what the eyes receive, right? So actually the mind. So you can see things and not see them. Is that right? Seeing they did not see, and hearing they did not hear. Jesus actually talks about parables that way, right? All right. But, Mom will say, go get this out of the pantry, James. And then James is like, I didn't see it. Now, did you see it? Yes, you did see it. But did you see it with your mind? No. Your eyes saw the light reflecting off of the thing, right? You understand how this works. All right. So this is what Solomon's doing. He's trying to teach us to be real, right? To get real, as they say, right? To get real. To be real. And that makes us uncomfortable because most of our life we don't actually, it's not just that we don't tell the truth, but we don't tell what's really real. So we may speak of the things that we see or hear, or touch or taste or feel, your senses stuff. We may even speak of the things that we've sussed out, that we've interpreted based off of the senses. But you all went very quickly to the scripture and to the spirit, because without the word and the spirit, what's the problem? Do we know if it's real? Right? What was the famous example this week? Oh yes, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Who follows the Bureau of Labor and Statistics? This is one of your favorite government agencies.
Job reduction.
Uh-huh.
Or the reduction in jobs.
Right. I just use that because it's contemporary, right? So they were telling us that they were estimating. This is the key word. They were estimating so many jobs, right? And each month they would say, well, last month we said that many, but really it was this many, right? And then you get to the end of the year and you're like, well, we said that, but now that we actually have all the data in, we overestimated by 818,000. So we overestimated by 30%. And obviously there's incentive to overestimate, not underestimate. Everybody wants more jobs, not less jobs, right? And it's kind of funny. So why would you do that? Well, because you're trying to be truthful. Now, the jobs reduction, 818,000, is that still an accurate number as to how many jobs were created? Who knows exactly? How would you ever know? How would you find out how many jobs were actually created last year?
You'd have to survey every company in the country.
You'd have to survey every employer. Right. And even then, are you going to get full participation? No. Can you ever really know? No, you can't. You can only estimate. This was the case with COVID too, if you were paying attention to that. They would say so many cases. It was based off a very small sample set, largely overestimated because who are they sampling? People who are sick. Hospitals, health agencies, people who are going for frequent testing, for example. If you didn't go for frequent testing, if you had gone for frequent testing, you could have skewed the numbers because the test came back positive when anyway. Right, it is statistical fraud, but that's the point of statistics. There's a great book. It's always a bestseller, How to Lie with Statistics. It's on Amazon. Every once in a while you'll see it. Famous people have it on their bookshelf behind them. It's a joke. All right, so we can't really know what's real when it comes to those sorts of things. We can guess, but we don't really know, right? We know we can only know really what we experience, but even that isn't necessarily real. And so this happens often in the church. I tell you that something's true because Jesus says so, and you're like, but that isn't exactly how I experience it. Right? And so then there's this constant conflict between what we perceive and what Jesus says is real. All right. So what Solomon's doing here, that's a roundabout way of getting to the point. What he's doing in chapter 1 and 2 is he's setting the standard to tell us that when we speak of things of the earth horizontally, right? There's a limit to that knowledge. And there's also a limit to its usefulness. Vanity, right? All is vanity, like grasping at the wind. So, at the beginning of chapter 2, we did this last week, he talked about trying to make himself laugh and also mirth, right? Joy and laughter, if you want to use those words. He tried all sorts of things to bring joy or to bring mirth and laughter. And what were the things he tried? Gratifying his flesh with wine, thinking about things with wisdom, and then how to lay hold onto folly, fun, if you like. So what kind of things did he do? He built public works projects. We talked about that, right? Right. So walls and, I don't know, probably streams and ponds and who knows, public works stuff. Houses, vineyards, gardens, orchards. These are all good things, right? With fruit trees, planting water pools, growing trees of the grove, with male and female servants, slaves, and then possessions of herds and everything like that. So we talked about how he's making, artificially, creating a new garden, right? Garden of Eden, right? So he's got, everything's there. Planting trees, bad idea? Good idea. Yeah, good idea, that's right. Building houses, well, house, but houses. Matt builds houses for other people, right? That's fine. What's that? So does Luke, yeah, exactly. He's working on it. Vineyards, bringing water where there wasn't water, doing it through like dams and canals and all that. Problem? No, right? But the context is, what is he trying to accomplish for himself in the process?
Storing up wealth.
Well, we'll get to that. That's true.
Happiness, satisfaction.
Yeah, happiness, satisfaction, even joy, delight. All right, and we know what's missing because you already pointed it out. Is like, where's God in any of this? Right? Because who's the subject of every sentence? I. Yeah, very good. You're catching it. Okay. Just basic grammar is very helpful. Just like phonics, we learned that we're supposed to teach reading with phonics. Isn't that amazing? Who learned to read with phonics? Yeah, everybody, except for apparently the last generation of children. They do like word, or whatever. The state said that we're back. Yeah, word recognition. We're back to phonics. Thank goodness. All right. So grammar's good too. I made myself. I acquired. I had. You see where this is going. Oh yes, and not just servants and herds and flocks. Oh yes, of course. I was just listening to a guy talking about, make sure you get 4-9 silver, not 3-9 silver. Because if there is a rush on silver, 4-9 will be more in demand than 3-9. Do you know anything about this? I don't either. Yeah, it's purity. So 99.999% pure or 99.9999% pure. Anyway, don't worry about it. So, but these are people who are thinking like Solomon, right? Oh, we got to have some silver and gold. Everybody buying precious metals? Good. I have a company that will sell it to you if you want. Just like on the internet, everybody's advertising, buy our precious metal. Special treasures of kings, whatever those are. And provinces of provinces. So more land. Large tracts of land. There you got your Monty Python reference for the day. Acquired male and female, oh yeah, I love this part. Male and female singers too. And musical instruments. So, in other words, to write me songs. Sing some music for me. We have this happen. Who is it that actually would sing for the king? And it would actually cast away the evil spirits? David. That's right. That's right. So David would sing for Saul, and then, that made Saul a little bit better for a little while. Right? And we have a lot of what David sang for Saul because it's called the book of Psalms. That's correct. All right. Other times he'd go try to sing for Saul, and Saul would throw the spear at him. Saul was possessed. In any case, so he kept trying, right? I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. So he's the best king ever. He made Jerusalem great again. And my wisdom remained with me. Remember, God gave him that back in 1 Kings. We read about that. He has more wisdom than anybody else. So, Solomon has it all, right? As far as earthly kind of stuff goes. But for what purpose? Which I think Allie was getting to, right? Which we'll get to in a minute. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. What do we call that? The desire of the eyes? 9th and 10th commandment? Yeah, coveting. And did he keep anything from his eyes?
No.
Whatever he saw and he wanted, he got it. Of course, he could. He's the king. No problem. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. So this is what, no doubt, the men did yesterday. I wasn't able to join you. I was somewhere in Iowa probably at that point. But, you get to the end. You did all the work, lots of work, hard work, right? Yeah. And you look at what you did, and you said, look at what we did, right? Amazing. Is that wrong? Can you be proud of the labor? No, right? But we still know what's missing, right? It's ultimately the credit. This is the reward from all my labor, my reward, my labor, all my pleasure, my eyes, I, and me, myself, and I. I should probably show you the parody of the praise band song. Have you seen this one? Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sure I've shown you. It's a person who takes and writes praise band songs, but as if there was no Jesus at all, right? So it's all like me, myself, and I singing to himself. Anyway, it's the narcissistic praise music. It's kind of funny. I have to find the clip, though, and I don't want to take the time to do it right now. They have their hand up? Nope. All right. And I looked on all my works that my hands had done, and on all the labor which I had toiled. And indeed, all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. So remember, we talked about this. Under heaven, under the sun. Solomon is making sure you understand. I'm only talking about from my perspective alone, right? And if that's true, it's all vanity. Why is it all vanity? Why is it like grasping at the sun? What is it about vineyards?
Temporary.
Okay, a vineyard. Why is a vineyard temporary?
We need the grape or the grape lots.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't tend to the vineyard, what happens to it?
It dries up.
Yeah, it dries up, right? Or, it has to be tended, it has to be pruned, you have to harvest, you have to do all of that, right? An untended vineyard turns into what? Wild grapes. And are wild grapes good? Apparently not. I don't know, this is what the Bible says. I've never. Did you?
They grow in here.
Anybody have the map of where all the asparagus grows? I hear there's ditch asparagus is a thing. Do you know about this? Yeah. It's all over, right? People just pull over and pick asparagus out of the ditch.
On the bike path.
On the bike path? Okay. I haven't looked that hard. Yeah. So asparagus you don't have to tend, in other words. Raspberries are that way too, I suppose. But a vineyard house, everybody knows this. You don't tend to the house, what happens to the house? Just like all the barns that you drive around here, right? It's like, why fix the barn? If you're not going to fix the barn, like when the roof starts to go, if you don't fix it then, you might as well just leave it and just let the whole thing fall apart, right? Which they do. What else? Houses. What other things did he mention? Oh, orchards. Same story, right? You have to tend to those trees, or they won't at least bear the kind of fruit they did. You have to maintain your water pools and your canals and all of that, or they don't work anymore, right? Herds and flocks, same story. Wolves and sheep, or wolves will come after the sheep, that sort of thing. Silver and gold works pretty well, except it just gets stolen. So, it's like vanity and grasping for the wind. Everything I tried to do, and what's he trying to do? Ultimately, what's Solomon trying to accomplish with all these things?
Joy, Lord's heart.
Joy, yeah, but that's temporary still.
The meaning of life.
Make heaven, meaning of life, good. Eternal life, right, to live forever. He knows he's going to die. That's what he's dealing with, right? But look at all the ways that I've tried to avoid dying, right? By acquiring all this stuff. And he'll talk about legacy next. I think this is where we left off. All right, so we should let's read 12 through 16.
Then I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has already done. Then I say that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I myself perceived that the same event happens to them all.
Oop.
So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity, for there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever. Since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does the wise man die? As the fool.
Oh boy. So now we're getting to it, right? All these things that I did, and all the things that I learned, all the wisdom that I acquired, all the cakes that I baked, I don't know, whatever it is, right? In the end, am I any different than the fool who wasted his life doing nothing? No, because we both die. Now, at the beginning, he had this interesting statement. Remember, he talked about, I think I said this maybe 2 weeks ago. I turned myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. So Solomon is talking about the way that even in his own life, he has tested the limits or boundaries of God's care for him. So he had wisdom, and wisdom includes things like prudence, right? And moderation. These are all wise things. Prudence, moderation. What are some other ones? What? Justice, yeah. Right? Fortitude. But we would talk, what are wise things to do? To eat well, right? To exercise, to get sunlight, right? To avoid, stress, although I don't know how you actually do that. I haven't figured that part out yet. It's supposedly a thing we're supposed to do, but I don't know how you do that. But in any case, right, these are all wise things. All right. But then he says here, madness and folly. So he's going to test the limits of that. So instead of moderation, he's going to live a life of excess, right? And see if that works. Rather than being just, he's going to push the limits of justice, right? And I think we can understand this because what I perceive happening. We're in a political season every 4 years, right? Every 2 years, really, right? Seems like every year, actually. But regardless, right? Doesn't it seem to you that our politicians, both sides, I mean, they're really not sides, actually. They're on a spectrum. I perceive that we're all right of everybody as Christians. If you want to use that right-left dichotomy. It doesn't really matter. The point was, it does seem that they're testing the limits of madness and folly. Let's see how far we can go before something breaks, right? We can talk about that economically. That's certainly true. But even let's test the limits of how much lawlessness can we tolerate before people start going nuts, right? As long as you don't steal more than $999, it's not shoplifting. Why would you? That's madness, right? Isn't that madness? Right? The broken windows thing is probably true. If you don't actually punish the little infractions, then you'll end up with large infractions. You end up in New York in 1970, right? Or 80 even. But Solomon says he tried this in his own life anyway. He tried the limit, let's see, 300 wives isn't enough, so I'm going to have 700 concubines. It's unfathomable, right? How can you even, I can't even get my head around, what 2 would be like, never mind 1,000. Right? Or Abraham with 4, right? Effectively, right? Because he had Sarah and Hagar and then the servants. Or not, that's not Abraham, that's Jacob. Jacob has Rachel, Leah. Do you remember the servants' names? Bilhah or something like that, right? And I don't remember the other one. You never talk about the servant girls, who are also his wives, though. Bear children to him. Mothers of the tribes. Anyway, yeah, 4 doesn't seem wise either. Granted, he got scammed, but still. By the way, the seed line, Jacob, came from Leah. So he could have been content with Leah and said, I didn't get the wife that I wanted, but I got the wife the Lord gave me. But anyway, he didn't. So, test the limits. Let's see what we can do. But what can the man do who succeeds the king? So what about his son, Rehoboam? Everybody study Rehoboam? Remember Solomon's son? How does it go for Rehoboam?
Not well.
Not well. Yeah. And whose fault is that? What?
His own.
It's his father's fault. Yeah. Yeah, Solomon is already acknowledging that. I mean, we don't know when exactly this was written. Was it before or after Solomon left? Did Rehoboam take over before Solomon died? No, it was after Solomon died. But it's possible that he already saw. So I would suggest to you this is autobiographical. We got another insert, or another sheet. You can hand those out. Because the note that I was looking for about Rehoboam's on here. I'll just show you an example of what it's like for his son. This is important, I think. 1 Kings 12. Oh, yeah. So Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to make him king. So it happened when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, heard it. He was still in Egypt, for he had fled from the presence of King Solomon and had been dwelling in Egypt, right, staging a coup from Egypt, so that they sent and called him. Then Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, "Your father made our yoke heavy." It's nice, right? "Now therefore lighten the burdensome service of your father and his heavy yoke which he put on us, and we will serve you." Is that actually true? I mean, life was brilliant under Solomon. It's like they had the largest territory they ever had. They were wealthier than they ever were. And then they come and say, "Oh, your father made our life miserable." All right, let's do a wealth transfer. Anyway, "Depart for 3 days, come back to me." The king Rehoboam consulted the elders. "How do you advise me to answer these people?" And they spoke to him, saying, this always pay attention to who your counsel is, right? "If you will be a servant to these people today and serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, then they will be your servants forever." But he rejected the advice that the elders had given him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him, who stood before him. As you do, right? So if you're into political stuff, which one party seems to be appealing to the elderly class, and the other party seems to be appealing to everybody under 30, right? Why? Because what do people under 30 think? We know better than the people, those old guys. Those guys who are counseling my father, what good are they? Their time is gone. It's time for young people to take over. Anything new under the sun? What did Solomon say? No. So he talked to the young people. "What advice do you give me? How should we answer these people who spoke to me, saying, 'Lighten the yoke'?" And the young men said, "Well, you should speak to the people who have spoken to you, saying, 'Your father did make our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter for us. Thus you shall say to them, my little finger shall be thicker than my father's waist.'" What an expression. Right? My father was generous. I'm going to be like exponentially better. My father put a heavy yoke on you. Oh, I'm going to add to your yoke. My father chastened you with whips. I'm going to chastise you with scourges. Well, that seems like not good advice. I don't know. Let's make it worse. All right. And so then all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them. The people answered the king, saying, "What share have we in David? We have no inheritance of the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel, now to your own house, O David." And Rehoboam ends up losing all of the northern kingdom to Jeroboam. And you can see why, because he's kind of an idiot. Apparently, wisdom is not epigenetic. It's not passed on to your children unless you give it to them. And that's what Solomon says, right? "I saw that wisdom excels folly and light excels darkness." So, yeah, wisdom's better than folly. Light is better than darkness. Already good. And it's good to be a wise man. Have your eyes on your head on the swivel, right? But the fool walks in darkness, except I'm still going to die, just as they are. So we haven't yet received the kind of wisdom that we actually need, which is the one that overcomes death. And that's what Solomon's been trying to do, and he's figured out that it's vanity, right? I think some people try to just embrace death. That's kind of the opposite approach. Instead of saying, well, I'm going to try to avoid death by living my maximal life now, right? Or these transhumanist people who inject themselves with young blood and all this kind of weird stuff. You've read about, I don't know if you heard about this. Botox for your face or whatever it is, which is just rat poison, which is funny. Inject your face full of rat poison. There's a medical benefit for some people, but my father did it for migraines. Apparently it worked for a while. All right. But how does a wise man die? Just the same as the fool. So this is really optimistic conversation. I'm sure you're enjoying it. All right? What did I write about this? Oh, one more verse. Therefore I hated life because of the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind. So if you try to put your faith, hope, life, and wrap it all up into the things of this world, what's going to end up happening? Right? If you look back, we've got 62 years of marriage. You look back on, right? 64, what? A lot. You look back on 64 years of marriage and you say, oh, what did we actually accomplish, right? I mean, yeah, well, yes, you raised your children. That's right, right? But if you start to look at it as something that you accomplish, you will end up with Solomon and say it was all just a waste of time, right?
What is that phrase? Your treasure is where your heart is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, and that's what Solomon's dealing with. Jesus taught this: where your heart is, there or where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Right, in Matthew 5, yeah. It's on the sheet, actually, for today. It's somewhere on there. I put it on. I linked to it. Oh, no, it's Matthew 6. It's right at the top of the sheet, Matt. Yeah, it's in the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah, that's what Solomon's dealing with. It's like he's put his treasure, his hope, his confidence, his future, even his eternity in the things that moth and rust destroy and, thieves break in and steal. Right? Or sons squander, as the case will be with Rehoboam, right? And it will only take one generation, and nothing of Solomon's kingdom is there except for Jerusalem, and it's a pale shadow of what it used to be, right? Now, I would also suggest to you, he's not going to do that here, but then to try to reclaim what you lost is also vanity. We talked about that last week. To say, well, we used to be this, so we're going to try to go back to that. That's also vanity. Because what are you also saying there? We're going to do it, right? Now, if God gives you to return to what once was, and we can pray for that, restore what is broken, right? Raise up what has fallen down, give us growth, as people, as a congregation, whatever it is, we can still pray for that. But ultimately, always under thy will be done. So, and God, the whole history of Israel is testimony to this, whether it's the time of the judges, the time of the kings, the times of exile, is that there are times where the land is left fallow and things are difficult, and then there are times where things are easier, right? And things are being built up. But in either case, the problem is you can either despair in times of lack, or you can rejoice and put your confidence in the times of prosperity and lose sight of, well, tomorrow's maybe not be like today. And it is kind of vain to say, well, we're going to build up a big endowment. This is true for the older churches than ours. So East Coast churches, Episcopalian in particular, some of those churches have $500 million endowments or less, and they have nobody in church each week. So you're like, well, okay, you did a great job on storing up wealth for a rainy day. For what purpose? So that building and grounds is preserved. But where are the people? Where are the people to hear God's word? So, that's vain too. Because what did they actually accomplish? Right? They have these historic places that we can go and visit that are relics of congregations that used to rejoice in God's word. Well, maybe instead of having stored up that wealth, there may have been a better use for it. But it's easy to do that in hindsight, isn't it? Right? If only during the times of prosperity, we had built barns and stored up for the 7 years of, there's a story about this, the 7 years of want. How is the only way you're going to know that there's going to be 7 years of want? If God gives a dream to Pharaoh, exactly, right. And maybe he does give his people dreams and we just ignore them. That's another question for another day. All right, in any case, I hated life because of the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me. So now it's actually been a curse to me. I've done all these things and it hasn't solved the problem. All right. So what did I write? What is the point of this section? That's a good question. Oh my, I wrote like 6 paragraphs. Oh no. The sorry fool lives in blissful ignorance, taking life as it comes, enjoying its fun, and ignoring the weightier issues of life and death. All right, that's true. That's what fools do. A wise person analyzes the world's hardships, wrestles with the problems of life and death, and diligently searches for the meaning of the joys of life, while earnestly hoping for life with God beyond the grave. All right, so that's what it means to be wise. I think that's a good summary. The difference is not seen in the earthly results. No matter how much wisdom and insight a person gains in this life, both he and the fool leave with nothing. And succeeding generations are no better off, equally hopeless. Okay? So, I mean, the whole idea of doing things to preserve buildings and vineyards and gold and silver and all of that kind of stuff, does it actually, does it produce what gives us hope, which is faithfulness? No. So the sobering conclusion under heaven, under the sun, is that's the sobering conclusion. The God of heaven, without faith in his word and saving deeds, is the sure basis for hope of eternal life, giving purpose, meaning, and eternal significance to the earthly life of believers. So as we said way back at the beginning, if you want to know what real life is like, you can't just rely upon your senses and your emotions and your mind and what you think and what you predict and what the patterns of things you see in this world. Those are all helpful in a horizontal way to be wise as serpents, but you need to hear what God has to say to actually understand what's really real, what's lasting into eternity. All right? Does that make sense? Okay. There are advantages to Solomon's kind of wisdom. So we don't want to make he's kind of depressed about it all, but still, generally speaking, the shrewd or the wise have the advantage over the gullible, the resourceful over the lazy, moral fiber over sheer lawlessness and anarchy. All right? So there is a wisdom to being good stewards of money and buildings and all those sorts of things, being resourceful with what you have and not being lazy, acting according to what is moral, right, good, right, and true, rather than what is not. That's all going to help you out. Solomon's not discounting that because he's going to spend chapter 3 through 12 telling you all sorts of things that have to do with that. Right? So what he's doing is he's really giving you a preface to all of the wisdom that he's giving so that you set its limit. And you say, okay, here's what it's useful for, but here's what it doesn't answer. Or here's a kind of wisdom that does apply to that, but not to this. All right? He wants us to understand, before he lays out this mature wisdom, its limitation. It is better to be a rich fool than a poor fool. Your shrewdness, resourcefulness, and moral character will eventually fail you as you are wrapped up in the busyness of the moment and lose sight of the ultimate. So this is how Gregory of Nyssa says it. Solomon, he teaches human wisdom, namely the following of true wisdom, and presents those things which have a substance and are not subject to vanity. Indeed, this is the summit of human wisdom, right? Build, plant, store up, right? All of that. That's human wisdom. It's true, right? But it has its limit. In my opinion, true wisdom and counsel are simply another kind of wisdom which provides for creation by which God makes all things. As the prophet says, you have made all things in wisdom. However, Christ is the power and wisdom of God in whom all things are made and ordained. So again, what is he missing? Why is it all vanity? It's not for Christ and his kingdom, right? He's not receiving these things with thanksgiving. He's receiving them as his own work. See what happened? And then they become a curse to him. Turn over the page. This is last week's handout, by the way, that I'm reading to you. Somewhere along the way, Solomon had grown from a trusting younger king, you can go read that in 1 Kings 3 through 8, into a fatalistic and hardened older adult. Anybody know those kind of people? This is the get off my lawn person, right? That's a great movie. What was that? El Camino or yeah. Gran Torino. I know it's some old car thing. Yeah. That's a race, isn't it? Gran Torino. Oh, he's run the race. Ooh, that's pretty good. Death, the old equalizer, would make Solomon the equal of every fool in the world. His worldly wisdom has gotten him nowhere. I'm just summarizing what he just said. There is no permanent record, no lasting legacy, except for the scriptures, right? Which happen to record for us Solomon's words. Any accomplishment of wisdom that has potential for long-range good will soon be undone by fools of the next generation. I don't know. I'll just let that one sit in your conscience for a minute. All the wisdom, all the long-range good that you do is undone, right? How many generations does it take to undo the generations of that have built? Yeah. It only takes one generation, it seems, and everything can be gone, right? Human wisdom finally fails with the big D word, death. What is the sense and purpose of death? Death is not wise. Thank you, Dorothy. You're getting there. Death is entirely unnatural. He knows he is waging a battle against death and he will ultimately lose, except for its defeat in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's New Testament. I think he sees it, though. All pride will fail. Only the grace of God will do. The effects of death are experienced long before death occurs. We call that everything is dying around us. What do we call that? Aging. Yeah. Philosophically, it's called entropy. Like the sun is dying, right? Did they told you that? It's decaying. Well, the nice thing about the sun dying is that as it dies, it actually gets bigger and hotter, and it burns us up. So, yay!
Oh, sorry.
Every 4 years, one of the best political campaigns comes back.
Is this solar flares?
No, it's the Great Meteor of Death. So, and they just changed the date, right? Save us, O great meteor of death. It's people who are very cynical, just wishing that a meteor would just come and hit the earth and destroy us all. Anyway, that's a great way to answer your political problems, isn't it? All right, back to the point. Living under the shadow of death renders all human effort futile, Job 3. In a way, life is the problem. In a way. There's a subtle blame here implied upon God, I would suggest. Like, why did he give us to do all these things if we just die? Right? Isn't that the question? He hasn't blamed on God yet, but he will. To complain about life is also to complain about the giver of life. Oh, this woman that you gave me. Oh, that's Adam. Adam blamed not just his wife, but especially God for what was entirely his fault. Right? He neglected his wife, but he blames God for it. You gave me her. Okay. Life apart from God under the sun is without profit, benefit, or advantage, is without pleasure, and is evil because everyone will die. Does this not explain why people live the lives that they do? Those apart from Jesus? It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you, if it's celebrity, right? Why are you doing that? Who's the one I was thinking of? Oh, well, they already do the compare and contrast of Madonna when she was, popular and now, and you're like, what did you do to yourself? Oh my goodness, right? What profit, what advantage, what benefit? It's like you've destroyed yourself with plastic surgery and whatever else, right? And you can see that they're chasing something, right? Or they wouldn't do that. You could say they're haunted and there's ghosts and all that kind of stuff that's affecting them from the past, but I don't even think it's just celebrity. If you have unbelieving coworkers or friends or whatnot, and maybe it's just your perspective, but I think you're perceiving something when it's like, why are you doing what you're doing? It doesn't seem like it has no lasting value. There is a way to embrace all the things that he talks about here in the negative in a positive way, and I've mentioned this a few times, is that to receive all things of life as a gift from God. Maybe here today, gone tomorrow, but still a gift, right? To be received with thanksgiving and joy. You can enjoy the food. You can be a foodie. It's okay, right? Obviously, we don't engorge ourselves on it, but we enjoy it, right? You can enjoy marriage and family. You can enjoy building houses, right? Or tearing them down, as the case may be, right? Planting vineyards and trees. I think God has given us creation for our enjoyment, but not for our worship, and that's the difference. So this is what Solomon's really talking about, is what's vanity and grasping the wind is trying to find purpose, meaning, hope, life in the things of the world rather than the one who gives them to you. Does that make sense? All right. Yes, good, Dorothy. Solomon is guiding us through the steps of the road to admitting one's sins and trusting in God's grace. We're just not there yet. Who alone can set everything aright. So I'm giving you an optimistic take here now. And we're going to get there. It's chapter 12, verse 13. It's the very last verse of the whole book. He eventually gets there. It takes a little while. By the power of God's Spirit, human complaints about one's life are redirected into confessions of sin from one living that life. To despair about one's attempts and abilities to improve one's life is good. From such despair or contrition, the Holy Spirit leads one to faith and to trust in the God who justifies the ungodly and raises the dead. So what Solomon's actually doing here is dying ahead of time. Right? And so that's why it's helpful for us, so that we can learn to die and to be raised from the dead, so that we can actually truly live, really live, not live whatever this is, right? But to really live, to live with faith and trusting in God and to receive all things as a gift from him. Right? So a lot of people haven't died yet, is actually what you're experiencing. Right? Now, baptism should give you that gift, but some people deny their baptism, so there's that too. All right. I promised we'd finish, so let's do it. 18 to the end.
Then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me.
Like I said, I don't think he has a high view of Rehoboam already.
And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool.
Who knows?
Yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also is vanity.
Unless, let me interrupt, unless you designate its use. I think that might be one way to avoid the folly of your children, is to say it has to be used for this, right? If you're going to leave an inheritance of money in particular, or wealth, is to say it's used for this, and also that it's very directed. If it's given to the church, you tell the church what it's to be used for, right? I know we don't like designated gifts. I'm looking at Don, he knows this, because designated gifts, they bind you, but that might be a helpful thing. They say if it cannot be spent for that, it has to be spent for this. Like maybe, and especially if you see something that's lacking that you think you could support in your death, right? It's to say, maybe it's outside missions, right? Which we do through a separate envelope, but maybe you'd like to see more. Then you say, okay, I'm going to endow it to the church, but it's only going to be used every year. You're going to have to pick an outside mission to support, right? Something not inside the congregation, something outside, right? So that you're living outside, right? That would be an example. Then you can avoid the folly of them just saying, we're going to pay the electric bill, which would also be okay, though, by the way, if you want to designate it for that, for utilities. That'd be great. We would love that, right? We would love that. But then, of course, then we're not responsible for it, and that's the problem with his son, right? He's not going to be responsible for anything. What do we call that person? People who get a big inheritance? They're born with a silver spoon. Right, exactly. All right, sorry. Trustafarians. I like that. All right, so where were we? 20, go.
Therefore I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. For what has man for all his labor, and for the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? For all his days are sorrowful, and his work burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This also is vanity.
Oh boy.
Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also, I saw, was from the hand of God.
Finally. Thank you.
For who can eat, or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind.
All right. So this last vanity, grasping for the wind, only pertains to the sinner who gives the work of gathering and collecting. All right. Now notice let's go back to where were we? Where did we leave off? Verse 20, right? I don't want to get too far ahead. So he despairs, my heart, of all the labor that I had toiled under the sun. Do you ever have this feeling? You get to the end of the day and you're like, wow, I worked hard today, but what do I have to show for it? All right? Or even if you have something to show for it, you're like, what was the point? I mean, that happens. I mean, because a lot of our days are very repetitive in that way, right? If you're in a service industry, which includes being a pastor, you often don't get to see the fruit of your labors. You know, sometimes people express it to you. They'll tell you, thank you for what you said or what you did, but generally speaking, not. That's okay. That's what we're given to do. Same thing with doctors, right? I mean, you like to think your doctor cares about you. I mean, they do in the moment when you're with them. But then after that, they move on to the next person. And they're not thinking of, I mean, some doctors might, but I don't think most think about you. Like, I haven't seen my family physician for probably 2 years. I don't think he's thinking about me most days. He's got so many patients. Who even knows? That's okay, right? But on the flip side, from his perspective, maybe he does think, I don't know, he's a Christian, so maybe he does think, I haven't seen Gillespie for a long time. What I did for him must have helped, right? Okay, or God has helped him, or God's providing for him, something like that. So maybe, right? But there again, what's the turn? It's away from what I've done to what God has accomplished through me or for me, right? So that he hasn't made that turn yet here at this point. And this idea that you would build up all this wisdom, knowledge, and skill, or in my case, I have a whole library full of books. Some of you have been in my study. There's a few books in there, right? And I've read majority of them, which is 51%. Maybe just a little bit more than half, right? Probably. And yet, what's going to happen to all of that wisdom in death? Unless somebody else reads it, right? Who goes back and reads their pastor's old sermons?
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. We have in the archive all the recordings, at least Pastor Showman's sermons when he was here. So how many years was that? That was 5 years? Yeah, I think it was 5 years. 5 years worth of sermons. Anybody going to go back and listen to those CDs? Right? It's not that it wasn't good work or it wasn't helpful or it wasn't what God had given him to do. But the thing is, you're leaving it to somebody who doesn't actually care. I mean, I'm thankful I'm thankful for all the pastors who preceded me, but what they said 17 years ago doesn't pertain to me. Now, maybe, in 100 years, you go back and you might say, well, what were they saying 100 years ago here? I don't know. I'd like to believe that somebody will actually take the time to read something that I wrote someday. Right. And some people collect them. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Have you gone back and listened? Maybe you should. Maybe you should. It might be interesting. You might find that they said the same things. Right. Yeah. I don't know. I have a recording of our wedding, speaking of wedding anniversaries, so 26 years ago. I wonder what he said, because I didn't hear it. Because it was 96 degrees in Chicago, my glasses were falling on my nose, where everybody's just sweating to death, which apparently is, they're air-conditioned now. Anyway. But it's Chicago, it's warmer. We were watching a show, it's set in Queensland, Australia, in the north part of it, so tropical Queensland. And they just have a fan going, and they're all sitting at dinner, and they're just sweating. And you're just like, but it's normal. That's just what happens. Yeah, you live in tropical Queensland, so of course you're just sweating all the time. Oh, it is what it is, right? Exactly. No, actually, no, there wasn't. At least not on the show, but they only pick nice, good-looking people for TV.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're talking about, you really basically die and then you're forgotten. Well, no, true. I mean, but why? And I thought about that.
Yeah.
Your family will remember you, whatever, but basically you live and then you're kind of forgotten.
Not by Jesus, though.
No, that's true. But why is it so important to us inside that we want to be remembered?
So that we don't die, in some way.
Oh.
Yeah, in some way. So you put your name on buildings, like Carnegie or Rockefeller or, right? And now I know you have a low opinion of Rockefeller, but I do too, for his medical stuff. But still, I mean, or other, at our Concordias, there's names on the buildings. And those, I mean, people won't remember who they are,
Right.
but they'll know the name. So, or if the seminary, yeah, you go to a seminary and you've got Walther and Lua, and I'm trying to think, Pieper, and I can't remember all the different names of the buildings there. And these are all famous people within our church body, famous. Important people back in the day, but still, unless you go and take the time to read what they wrote and to study their life, they're not remembered. I think my family has a weird tradition, the pastors of my family, which you have to go back a few generations, is they all wrote autobiographies. And I've read them, the pastors. It's very interesting, and I refer to it all the time because it is part of who I am, right? Like My grandfather wrote one too, even though he wasn't a pastor. He was a layman, but he wrote his too. Just like the important touchstones. It's only, 15 pages or something. It's not a novel. But there's a way of remembering them then. But no one is truly forgotten. But they're not going to be remembered by their work is the key, right? That Solomon's getting to. They're remembered. Ultimately, we want to remember, and we do this with our saints' days, our commemorations, for the work that God accomplished through them for the church, primarily. That's why we remember these people. Like, that doesn't mean you can't remember. I think maybe we've lost sight of remembering people for the little work that they do too, because it is service to God to raise your children in the faith, right? There's no greater calling, actually, to bear children and to raise them up in faith and love of Jesus. So we can remember people for that. We do that at funerals. You've noticed I have like a different kind of obituary that I try to usually create, and it talks about how Jesus baptized them and how he confirmed them in the faith, and he gave them into marriage, and then gave them a holy death, and that they served in the church, in the community. They served their neighbor in love. And a lot of that we didn't see, but just like Jesus said, actually at the day of judgment, we're not even going to recognize our own work or the work that he accomplished. When did we see you hungry and thirsty and naked or in prison or whatever? Well, you were doing it the whole time. You just didn't see it. And again, that would be vanity to try to find things that we can hang our hat on to prove that we love God or truly serve him, right? That would be vanity and great evil. So what has a man for all his labor, for all the striving of his heart? Apart from God, what is it? Sorrowful, burdensome, right? No rest, grasping at the wind, right? That explains epidemics like suicide or licentiousness, just debauchery, just living as if nothing matters, right? Nihilism. That's what it is apart from God. But then he gives us the positive here, and we don't want to leave on a negative note. So here's the positive: keep life simple. Right? It's his point. Nothing is better for a man, earthly sense, that he should eat and drink. His soul should enjoy the good of his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. So there's the key: to receive all things in life as a gift from God. That includes plenty and want. All the things of a marriage vow, by the way, sickness and health, right? It's like, no, God gave me to you, even if all of these things happen, or if my life is this way, you're still a blessing to me, because God has promised to bless me. But to find blessing in the midst of difficulty, anybody good at that? Anybody figured out how to make that work? Oh, look, I'm sick, thank God. No. He describes that as bearing a cross, actually. It's to continue to trust in him even when it seems as if he's forsaken you. That's not going to be easy, right? Who can eat or have more enjoyment than I? Well, no, nobody could. Solomon is the rich fool, actually, in the parable, unless he says this, and he does. For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight, meaning made good. But to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before you. So even those around, that's an interesting statement, isn't that? Anybody around you, even if they don't know God, they're still serving God, and they're still in service to you who love God. All right? So God is working all things together for your good, even those who hate him. That's also hard to receive when things aren't going so hot. Solomon's primarily dealing with when things are really good. And yet, you get to the end of it all and you're like, well, what was the point? Right? And unless it's received with contentment, with enjoyment in God, right, with his wisdom and knowledge and joy, what good is it? All right? So, recognize that everyone and everything around you is a gift from God, and that will change things, maybe is a way to put it. And you can read about that here on the sheet, which I'm not going to read any more on, right? But, or maybe the last paragraph. It's short. So go ahead, enjoy everything good that comes from God's hand. Enjoy the simple things God personally delivers to you, and leave the bigger problems and questions of life to him. God is the Father, not you, not pastors or professors or anybody in authority in church and society. They can all try to be God in God's place, but it's not their job. And of course, this is the problem with social media, but that's a whole other story, is that they want you to believe that everything is your problem and you have to care about everything everywhere all the time. Isn't that God's care? Your care is given here, locally, your family, your friends, all right? And that will actually bring some contentment. You're like, I hate what I hear is happening over there. God, take care of it. Right? Okay. So, next week we get to start with just nice wisdom. And you all sing the song, right? Turn, turn, turn. There you go. There you go. That was at my wedding. Yep, Ecclesiastes 3 was at my wedding. Yeah, my aunts sang it. They loved that song. So I was like, what do you guys want to do? You want to sing? And they did. And that's what they sang. For every season. Yeah. A time to live, a time to die. That's a great thing to hear. No, I'm not silly. I was actually speaking the truth. Oh, yeah?
Okay, we brought a sprayer for the boats because there wasn't.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, because that's what it's